Okay, Paul, so I'm going to take a look at this. Thanks for sending your swings and see if we can help you get something that you can work with here. I know you said you had a limitation, what you thought was a limitation to turn due to a neck injury. And also your knee had been, had a surgery, but you said you didn't think that really affected things. So let's take a look and see how we can help you out here, okay? So we're going to draw in our traditional lines. We're going to take a look at a couple things. So we want the butt close to the heels to start with. We like the armpits over the knee, balls of the feet and lined up pretty close to the kneecaps. You have a very close stance, which is okay if you tend to be steep. And it sounds like you have an issue with that. So we're going to take a look in a minute. So we'd want the armpits pretty much right about there. Yours are out just a hair, okay? So I would expect either your head to pull off or your butt to pull under or a little bit of both, okay? That's very, very common. We like our back line around 152. Yours looks to be about 149, somewhere in there maybe. Let's take a look. Yeah, you're about 149. So I'd like you standing just a touch taller here, just a little bit, like that. So your lower back will be just up a little and it'll round off your upper back just a little more, okay? So it'll get your armpits back just a touch. What'll happen is with them out a little bit, your weight will go out on your toes, and that'll cause you to try and find balance as you swing to the top. So we're going to take a quick look at that and see if that happens. So let's keep this. All right. Whoops. Sorry about that. Wrong tool. So if we take this and let's take you to the top. So now you can see after all is said and done here, you pretty much get your armpits back over the balls of your feet at impact, okay? So I was right there. You immediately move your head off the ball and your butt sucks under you a little bit. And you have no turn really. So it looks to me like you might be sliding just a touch instead of turning your pocket deep. So let's take a look at that. Because really, with guys with any kind of physical limitations or broader chested guys like yourself, a lot of the time we need to really make sure that right pocket works deep and we create some space on that right hip. And I'm going to talk to you about what I mean there, okay? So let's take a look at the face on, okay? So, all right, so you look like you have a lot of tilt. You have a lot of basically over the top or anti-steep moves built in. Your pelvis is forward, which causes you to have a lot of tilt. So your ankles, your feet are pretty close together, and you can see that your lead hip is in front of that box and your trail one's well inside of it. So your pelvis is forward, which is going to make your tilt like very, very high. I would say you've got about 11 or 12 degrees of tilt here. Yeah, you got 11 degrees. So that's like driver tilt. And that's because we want to hit up on a driver. Now, obviously, we're not wanting to hit up on our irons. So the thing is, you've got the ball off the left ear, which is great, but the problem is you got too much tilt. So if you took less tilt, your ball would be forward a little bit more. And also, it would help you hit down and compress the ball a little more. And so basically you're set up for an end-out path, which I'm cool with, but you said you had issues getting your pressure forward. And that could be part of the problem because you have a lot of tilt. Another thing is you probably slide because of this pelvis being forward. Because generally if it's forward like this, your body wants to find balance, so it'll slide in the backswing. Generally is what we see a little bit. And you can see that. See that little bump right there? So instead of turning deep and creating some space there, I'd like to see that you had created space there, like maybe your right hip would be about right here now, but instead you actually gave up a little space. So that's going to make it really, really difficult to turn. And another thing you're doing is you're taking out your left bend very early. Okay, now you have a ton of tilt So it won't show that your head moves off the ball. But it appears to me you're just coming up very flat with your shoulders. So you're basically standing up and no turn, and your arms are working very much up. Okay. So by left arm parallel here, I like the shaft vertical, but your hands aren't very deep. So there's lots of ways to get things done, and there's lots of matchups. The only way you could get away with this is if you didn't have this so crossed up, because you have this very, very across at the top, and with your particular pivot and with that bump, I'm guessing you slide. So we're going to look right now, and there it is. Big old push off that trail leg. Okay, so that big old slide's going to make us really come down steep from where you are at the top. Yeah, and there you are. So that's going to cause a major problem. Okay, so really there's really not, it's your pretty simple fix as far as like what I'd like to do with you already. I'm going to explain a few more things, but I want to start in a specific place so that we can work off of that. Because rather than just load you up with a bunch of information, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you an overview of things I see, things I'd like to work on with you. But I also want to keep it simple enough where you're like not so overwhelmed where you're like, this is just not possible. It's not going to happen. So I want to give you a very specific plan to get you there. And rather than just, like I said, blow your head up with a ton of information and try to do this all at once, I want to be methodical about it and get you on the right track as quick as possible. So literally without looking at any more of your swing, I could do that. So right now I'm going to look at your swing and just kind of go over the overview of what I see. Okay. But we're going to talk about a very specific game plan. Okay. So I'm going to look at your club face real quick while I'm doing this. So I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, so bear with me. I just want to make sure that you're getting club face is good at the top, definitely not open at the top. It's pretty much on your arm line. But when you come down, you add some extension to the back of that wrist. So that club face is definitely coming in open now. Very, very open. And you're going to have to swipe across at the bottom and straighten that arm. So we've got club face issues. I would say that it's more with your wrist angles than with your grip, because your grip is pretty much neutral to slightly strong with your left hand and strong with your right hand. It's very under. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So when you stand up out of that, it sucks that club head in just a little bit inside your hands, but you recover nicely, getting that shaft nice and vertical, basically right between ball and toe line, like I like. I like that. It's a cool move. I mean, I like the steep shaft, but you better rotate to get that thing to shallow back out. Okay. So when we get to the top, we're very internal here, which is fine. Again, but that doesn't mean we have to be so across with our club. And if you're going to slide like you are, that's not going to match up well. See how much you've come off your head and your hip lines? I want you to stay on those, okay? So basically, from here, you're dead because your shaft is across the line. You're going to pull down. Your right elbow is going to get internal here. So your hand's traveling down faster than your elbow. And basically, it's just going to get this shaft tipping steeper and steeper while the hands move out. There you go. And it's going to have to try and shallow late, but you can't because your face is open. So you shallow, and then you swipe across at the bottom a little bit. So it's just not matched up correctly, all right? So let's take a look at the face on, and we'll talk about some options. So we're going to bump. We already saw that. Your head wants to move the other way, right? Well, why? Why would it want to move this way? Well, it's because you had too much tilt. So it's trying to find a little more of what you think is a better position at the top. Now, we don't get hardly any shoulder turn at all. I mean, if you look at yourself at left arm parallel, we like 60 degrees of shoulder turn, okay? That's our stock model. Now, do you have to be at 60? No, not necessarily. but you're probably at about 30. Yeah, 28 degrees essentially. That's not much at all. Okay, so that's why we don't have any depth. And you're sliding, which makes it impossible to turn. So you just kind of buckle to the outside of that right foot with your pressure. And you can see those hips slide, and your head moves toward the target, trying to find a better position because you know you had too much tilt. So you're trying to find that balance. But the problem is now, because of all the tilt and because of the slide this way, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to slide this way. Try to get back. And that's exactly what you're going to do. So the right hip stays on the start line. Push, 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 push. Okay, so here, as far as the actual space we get on the right hip, it's about where we want it. The problem is your left hip is definitely not lower than your right. Okay, it's not working around. You aren't getting back to square at all. So like when you look down the line by right, left arm parallel, we want the hips back to square, and yours are very closed out because you're sliding, you're not turning, okay? And that's why your shaft is so steep. And then you keep slide, slide, pull the hand, slide. You're getting very tilted, trying to see your hips are tilting a lot. You're trying to shallow like crazy, and your hips are super tilted. Your shoulders starting to work up. Everything's tilting too much, and you can't turn from there. And then you release early. Why? Because you had to stand up, and it's the only way you could get to the ball. Also, your club face was wide open, so you're going to release early to try to square it, and that's what you do. So if you watch your head movement, you basically start with too much tilt. It works toward the target, and then it's going to drop back into impact. Well, when it drops back into impact, if your weight pressure hangs back because you have so much tilt to start, then you're going to chunk. Okay, or top, depending on when you release it. So you can see this head is moving all over the place. That makes the low point really hard to control. And what's going to happen is you're going to pull your arms across. You're going to flip release there. Okay, and you can see you're trying to hold it off. That's why you look a little bit jammed up. And very telling position is right here. We have no rotation really. Okay. If we look at Ben Hogan, who was one of the best ball strikers that ever lived, if you look at him at this point, you'll see a big difference there. And see how you just pulled your arms across your body, and he actually turned through it. His belt buckle and chest are facing the target. So you would have a very chicken wing looking finish, I'm sure, which we'll look at right now. Take a look and see if that's the case. So let's look. There's the chicken wing. There's that left elbow coming out, okay? So we've just kind of pulled our arms across us. So basically, in a nutshell, you were talking about having issues with low point. Well, what is low point controlled by? Well, it's controlled by weight shift and release, basically. So if we get our pressure forward and we get a good release where our hands are on our left shoe at impact, we're always going to have good low point or good contact. But you aren't keeping your head centered, which causes a lot of problems to start with. So you're moving it all over the place, see? And then what happens is you don't release on your front your shoe because you're trying to square the face and you've stood up, so you're trying to get to the ball. So that causes low point issues, and we don't end up with our handle on our shoe like we need, okay? And then we're basically pulling our arms across us. So that creates a lot of issues with face control, because if you look at impact, your right arm is just thrown completely and straight, okay? From down the line, we go no turn, arms ride up, and then we pull down, we're steep, and we try and save it at the end, okay? So that's kind of where we're at. Now, question is, how do we match it up? Well, there's a lot of ways to go about it. If you want to continue to have no depth and be a slider, we can't have this shaft so across like this, okay? We would have to have the shaft at the top for you on a better plane. For you, which would be more neutral to even laid off. Because with a slide, you'll still be able to come in on a better plane, okay? That would be one way to match it up if you don't want to mess with many other things. That's like the probably the easiest, fastest matchup to get you hitting the ball a little bit better. But obviously, there's fast ways and there's the ways that I would recommend, which is going to be more of it's going to require work, obviously. And the work would be learning to, get your setup adjusted just slightly, like I recommended, turning earlier, getting more depth, and keeping that shaft more, you know, on plane or even slightly across. And then from there, just learning to rotate instead of slide. So we can actually shallow and have the hands work out instead of having to compensate and do something to square. Okay. So you said that you'd put me in your will if I got your plane sorted out. So that's pretty cool. That's quite an offer. And I think I can definitely help you out. So I'm looking forward to being a part of your will. Anyway, so, but yeah, I mean, there's, like I said, kind of depends on the route you want to go. Like, hey, some people are just like, hey, I don't want to practice that much. I don't want to put that kind of work into it. I want the easy, fast fix. And for you, the faster fix that would get you at least hitting it a little bit better is to basically, like keep your head centered better with proper tilt and then get that shaft a little bit better at the top. And you can probably hit a lot better shots than you're hitting now. Maybe learn to turn that hip a little bit better, get it deeper. So there are options, and I'm going to give you a few of those as I make the other videos, okay? I want to show you your different matchups, all right? So I'm going to give you those options, and you can take them and do what you want with them. And, we're going to do a follow-up here to make sure that you're going on a correct path towards where you would like to go, okay? But there's always options. You've seen it on the Champions Tour every day. I mean, there's lots of different matchups. So, it just depends on how much work you want to do and how much time you have to practice, all right? So, hope that helps. I know I said a lot and talked about a lot. I'm going to clarify it in the next video, okay? So, I'll be sending several along with this.